How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Chaos at Noah. We are in the 6th chapter, I believe, and it is titled Noah. I don't know what Noah means. I don't know what Nozomi means. I don't know what anything means. It seems as if the more that we go through this story, the less things seem to make sense. Is Takumi our enemy, and he just doesn't realize it? Is somebody else the enemy, and we just don't realize it? Is there even an enemy? I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to tell what is happening. I would like to believe that there is just another side of us that's kind of just trolling ourselves just because, but I don't know. That seems too convenient. Who really knows what's happening? But we continue along. Yasuji Ban was finally released from the long task force meeting and should have felt much better. But today things were different. He walked away from the other detectives and toward the windowsill, where he called his junior partner. Suwa hadn't shown up for the meeting today. Ban had wanted to skip it too, so it didn't seem fair that Suwa got to. Suwa might not look like it, but he took his work extremely seriously. At least that's what Ban had thought, so he was surprised when Suwa skipped today. He tried to get a hold of him several times, and there had been no answer. Ever since Ban had talked to Momose 2 days ago, he'd had a bad feeling that wouldn't go away. And things had gotten even worse today. Not only was Suwa missing, when he'd brought up the GE rate during the meeting, Matsunaga had told him that he was being ridiculous and needed to stop wasting everyone's time. Please don't let anything else happen. Yeah, so I guess that's also what happened in the previous episode. So we got to see Momose, who I recognize from Chaos Child, and she is a bit of an informational type of person, helping out and all that on the side, I guess. Other than that, I don't really remember what she does, but she was able to supply some information that he found very surprising. He did not know this. The possible people that are helping with the whole GE rate deal. And it is the political party that has the most control over the government at this time in Japan. I believe that's what's going on here. Ban sighed a little as he fanned his face. He heard the call being picked up, and Suwa answered. The connection was really bad. Ban wondered if Suwa had gone off somewhere deep in the countryside. Ban yelled. He stopped being able to hear Suwa at all, and instead there was a small period of nothing but static. Suwa shouldn't have been going off on his own. But Ban had a nasty habit of doing just that. He chuckled. Maybe his bad habits had rubbed off on his junior partner. Hey, yo? Ban's eyes went wide. Hey, yo. Suddenly, the ground started to shake. The shaking got more and more violent. Ban couldn't even stay standing. He dropped to a crouch to keep from falling over. At first, the other detectives seemed unconcerned, but they soon realized the seriousness of the situation and began to crouch or hide under tables. The clock on the wall, the pens and paper cups on the table, the projector device. One after another, they fell to the floor with a crash. The 2 whiteboards in the conference room fell too. It was like a passenger jet that ran into a stream of turbulence. That's how it felt to Bon, like his legs weren't even touching the ground. The shaking was spinning his body left to right. It was probably a 5 or a 6 in intensity. Is this the next big one? And now of all times? Then Bon felt a strong shock, like someone punched him in the head. He moaned in pain. No one had physically punched him. It was just an incredible headache. Suddenly, a scream filled the conference room. Bon gritted his teeth and looked up and saw one of the local detectives and his hands pressed up against his head, trembling with pain. Then he fell helplessly to the ground like a doll dropped by a child. Most of the other detectives were either wincing in pain, their hands against their temples, or holding their heads. What was this headache? He'd never felt anything like it before. Did it have something to do with the earthquake? Bon had no idea, or no way of knowing. This is basically the same shit that was happening over at the school. It's how we ended the last episode. Little by little, the shaking stopped. Bon looked outside, vision blurry. There was white light everywhere. It was so bright, Bon couldn't even keep his eyes open. Yeah, that's what happened at the school as well. Which isn't really normal. Hey, yo. I opened my eyes, feeling a pain so strong I thought my head would burst. I realized I'd fallen backwards into the middle of the room. I tried to get up, but when I did, the pain in my head spread throughout the rest of my body. I moaned in agony. Is the computer okay, though? I mean, everything kind of just fell over, it looks like. After 5 minutes or so of writhing on the floor, the pain gradually subsided. I managed to use the bedpost as a support to climb back up. I wiped away the thick sweat on my brow. My room looked like it had been hit by a tornado. All of my wives had either toppled over or fallen off the shelf entirely. My bed was now tilted, and my manga and H-game boxes had fallen off it and scattered onto the floor. What had just happened? I'd picked up the phone and then heard Torianse, and then it had turned into what sounded like an ambulance siren. That seems to be like what triggered everything. And that's right, there had been that buzzer sound and then the low sound of the earth rumbling. And then it felt like my whole body had boiled and melted. I didn't remember anything that happened after that. My mind was a total blank. Was this some kind of electromagnetic wave attack by Shogun? Maybe Shogun could do the same thing as the system I'd read about in that patent. The idea terrified me. I looked up at the ceiling, still reeling from my headache. Of course, there was nothing to see. If my mind was being read, it was being read by a satellite high above me. But from what Senna had said before, it sounded like that the system in the patent was already in use, and some people were using it for evil. If one of those people was Shogun, no, that was impossible. There is no way that could be true. That frail old man looked like he could die at any moment. There's no way he could have his own orbital satellite. Or was he at the center of some big government project? And there was no point in starting a delusion and scaring myself to death with it. Wow, we're actually thinking clearly there. It was clear something had happened, so I decided to look online to find out what. I crawled toward the computer, trying my best to ignore the pain in my head. Oh. I was sure I'd left my computer on. It should have been displaying the Seriton screensaver, but instead the screen was black. I hadn't set it to go into standby mode automatically, so that shouldn't happen, but my mind was still foggy. My whole body felt frail and weak. It took all my strength just to stand up. I gripped my teeth to help with the pain and tried to move the mouse. Nothing. It's off, buddy. Next, I tried the power button. There we go. The hard disk started to whir and click. I slumped into my computer chair with a thud while I waited for my computer to boot up, and I reached out a desperate hand for my phone, which was still lying on the table. I looked at the time.
13時
What time had it been when I got that call? I remembered I was looking at information on ISA on Atchan. I tried to think, and the pain just got worse. What time? Think. Remember. That's right. It wasn't even noon yet. Which meant...
1時間以上も気絶してた
or more than a day. Or had I been sleepwalking and been off wandering somewhere for the past hour?
僕は無遊病じゃない
I shook my head before my brain could fill itself with more negative thoughts. When I did, the aching in my head made me feel like I would pass out. It was like my brain had been replaced by a lump of lead. I looked over at the PC monitor. Ugh.
おいマジで
So what happened? Disable the driver or check with the manufacturer, driver update, try changing video adapters, check with your hardware vendor for any BIOS updates, disable BIOS memory options. If you need to use safe mode or remove disabled opponents, restart your computer. Nice. Press F8 to select advanced. Okay, so it's struggling to load up the operating system. There's a hardware issue. It's beginning dump of physical memory, so it's just clearing itself. Could it be my hard disk was damaged?
嘘だそんなのありえないあっちゃダメだそんなことになったら全てが終わる
My gigabytes of saved XXX Moe porn. My save data for my H games. My bookmarks for my daily browsing. My schedule that told me when to go to school. And more than anything, the most important thing in the world to me. My ESO saved. What the fuck? That's not backed up? That has to be cloud-based. That has to be. Was it all gone? Yeah, I mean, if it's an online game, your data is not local. Your save data is definitely not local. I wanted to scream in rage. I wanted to pound my fists into the keyboard. I wanted to kick in the walls, and more than anything, I wanted to see if I could be recovered right, or to see if it could be recovered right this very instant, excuse me. But my whole body was still heavy and slow, and my head still ached. All I could do was lie back in my chair and bite my lip. It was over. My life was over. The loss of my ESO save data meant my life no longer had any meaning. Nothing mattered anymore. My life was nothing but ash and dust. Somebody just kill me, Ed. Careful what you wish for, buddy.
待ってタッキー
Sarah looked up from where she was lying sideways on my desk and gave me an angelic smile.
冷静になりなよ円数みたいなオンラインのゲームってセーブデータは全部サーバーに保存されてるんじゃない
Well, I'm glad somewhere in his mind he's smart enough to realize that. Server? Did she mean the game company's server?
だからたとえタッキーの PC が壊れてもナイトハルトッチのデータは消えてないはずっしょ
Oh, right. This was something every gamer knew, but I was so out of it that I'd forgotten. I felt like I'd found one small sliver of hope amidst the despair. Way to go, my wife. I hadn't made any backups of my pics or MP3s, so I'd have to give up on those. It wasn't ideal, but I didn't have a choice. I still wanted to start reformatting my computer as soon as possible. I needed to see if my ESO data was safe with my own eyes. Of course, for that I'd need this headache to go away. The pain didn't feel like it was going away anytime soon. What a weird situation. There's really nothing else that I can say about this. It's just like, oh wow, a magnitude 5, at least 200 casualties. The thing is that it wasn't just an earthquake. There was more to it. There was that white light in the sky, and it seems like something affected, like, everybody. It's like some sort of, like, virus. The big televisions outside Shibuya Station usually played commercials or promos for famous music artists. Today, however, they were showing a stern-looking newscaster. It was a TV show with the following text at the top of the screen. Intensity 5 earthquake hits Shibuya, at least 200 casualties. Earthquakes were nothing special in Japan. There would be several earthquakes around a 5 on the scale even around Tokyo. But as more information started to come in, it became apparent that the number of casualties was abnormally high. There was a similar earthquake in 2005 and not a single person died. Compared to that, this was almost unbelievable. And this was even more true when you considered that it had happened in Shibuya, the center of the NewGen murders. There had been an earthquake 3 months ago in Shibuya too. That one had only been a 3 on the scale, but 8 people had died. I mean, it doesn't take much, you know? Was Shibuya cursed? Many of the people who saw the first reports of the quake thought that, even if they didn't say it. But either way, the first special broadcasts about the earthquake were ready to go almost as soon as it started. Right now, there wasn't a lot of solid information or clear numbers, but the female newscaster was reading out a script. The Fire and Disaster Management Agency has confirmed at least 31 deaths and is expecting that number to grow even higher. The cause of the deaths is currently unknown. There were also reports of a mysterious white light in Shibuya after the earthquake, a shock wave, and the sky turning white. The cameras at Shibuya Scramble Crossing had seen the light, and the big TVs were showing the footage they'd taken where everything had turned white just after the quake. The white had appeared just as the earthquake did, and at first it was less a white and more of an incredibly intense light. The light covered Shibuya in an instant and was so bright that no one could keep their eyes open. Anyone from the generation that lived through the last war would have immediately thought it was a nuclear weapon. In fact, there were those who'd seen a white mushroom cloud rising hundreds of meters in the sky above Shibuya, but it had dissipated almost instantly. What the light was, what caused it, and what it had to do with the earthquake were, for the moment, total mysteries. The strangest thing was that the white sky had gone back to normal within an hour, and once more a murky blue color lay above the heads of the people of Shibuya. Weren't we just talking about the color of the sky like a few episodes ago or something? There was a tiny crack just a few millimeters in the asphalt around Dongenzaka Hill. There were also small cracks in the walls at some of the mixed-use buildings around Center Street. What an interesting earthquake, quote-unquote. Well, at least this is starting to look a little bit more normal, if not completely. My headache hadn't gone away. It took around 2 hours to reformat the hard drive. I'd almost passed out several times from the pain, and I'd gone to sleep in the middle of something before, but this was my first time really passing out from something. Still, the pain was a lot better than it was 2 hours ago. I drank some soda to quench my thirst and steeled myself to get to work. I put the bed back where it was, giving myself a place to stand on the floor. It was hard considering how weak I was, but if I didn't clean it up, I wouldn't be able to leave the place. If I was trapped inside and unable to escape during Shogun's attack or his next attack, not that I knew for sure if the earthquake was his doing, I'd be doomed. I needed a way to get out. When my OS was finally back, I headed over to my computer and installed ESO. I tried logging into Baslard. Yep, there he is. Again, like it's obvious.
やった。ナイトハルトは消えてない。装備とかも全部無事だ。よかった。よかった。
You see, it'd be weird if he was gone, because it is an online game. I was so excited that I tried to stand up and raise my fist in the air, but I was too exhausted. Still, I was so happy to see that such an important part of me hadn't disappeared after all. Now then, with that done, it was time to see what had actually happened. Personally, I wanted an apology and compensation from whoever was responsible. It felt like an earthquake, but there were so many things that didn't make sense. I looked to see if Grim was playing, but he wasn't. I went to our usual chat room, though it was harder with my bookmarks gone, And he wasn't there either. What good was he if he wasn't there when I needed him? I ended up checking the top page of Taboo instead. Alrighty. Yeah, that's kind of what we expect from this. The article read Shibuya casualties over 200. There had been an earthquake from the look of it. It was a 5 on the scale. There were an awful lot of casualties though. Supposedly the number was likely to go even higher than 200. There was other stuff too about how the sky above Shibuya had temporarily turned white, or a big mushroom cloud above the city, but nobody seemed sure about what they had to do with the earthquake. And Atchan was talking about it too. Most comments were things like Shibuya again, or Shibuya's screwed. There were videos uploaded too, and I could see what the cameras in Scramble Crossing had recorded.
これ、地震だけじゃないよね。
You don't say. I'd felt an incredible headache when the quake hit. No, it was way worse than just a headache. It felt like my brain was boiling over. And even 2 hours later, there was still an aching pain, and I still felt exhausted.
電子レンジに閉じ込められたら、あんな風になるかもしれない。
If that was the case, maybe my ideas about this being some kind of electromagnetic wave attack from Shogun weren't just delusions. Then I heard a noise I recognized from my PC. It was the sound of somebody joining the chat room. Is it Grim? It might have been Grim. I turned my eyes towards the chat window to ask him the details. Oh, that's not Grim. A scream slipped from my lips. Hey, yo, what up, buddy? Why would he show up now? Had he been reading my thoughts after all? My hand was shaking on my mouse. The rest of my body had frozen with fear. Even the pain in my head was gone. I didn't even want to look at the word Shogun, but I couldn't take my eyes off the monitor. I wanted to leave the chat room, but it was like my mind had left my body. I couldn't even move the mouse. I felt the prickling on my neck. I was being watched again. It was the gaze of God. Or maybe it wasn't God, but Shogun, looking at me from satellite orbit. I wanted to run away. But where? He could find me anywhere in Japan. Yeah, it has been a while, huh? That was the first thing that he had said. He was talking like he was greeting an old friend. But I never remembered being his friend. I bit my lip and stared at the characters on the screen. But after he spoke, I found myself able to move again. I grabbed my phone. It was just past 3 p.m. She might still be in class, but Rimi might be able to help me, believing that was my only choice. I called Rimi's number. It was easy to find because it was one of only a few in my contacts, excuse me.
助けて、リミ。
I don't think she's gonna pick up. Do you hate me?
リミ、早く。出て。
It hurt to breathe. I couldn't think. Rimi wasn't picking up. The phone kept ringing and ringing. Why? Why don't you always show up when I'm in trouble? Why aren't you here now? I'm sending you a present? A present? Yeah, that was a fun present. You're sending me another one of those pictures? And this time you're going to make me out to be the NewGen killer, aren't you? No, I'm not the killer. I felt like a fish that had flopped onto the land. I wasn't getting enough oxygen. My head felt like it was full of fuzz. My only hope was Rimi. I gripped the phone tighter, praying and focusing on every sound that came out of the receiver. It picked up. Oh my god. I hope you like it. Voicemail, oh no. Aw man, come on. This isn't the time for a delusion. I hung up the phone disappointed. I wrapped my arms around myself to keep steady. We need something good to happen. We just need something good. My body had started to shake. I was more afraid of Shogun than I thought I was. Of course I was. He was pretending to be disabled, but he was a murderer who'd killed people 5 times. And I was his next target.
助けてよ。
Well, what is his present? You know, I have a bad oh. Rimi. Like it was planned from the start. Like the cry of my heart had been heard. Rimi had come to save me. She flung open the door and came racing inside.
リミ、助けて。
Rimi looked at me for a moment and then looked around the room. She saw instantly that the computer was the cause of my fear and began to type at the keyboard with an angry look on her face. Shut up, jerk. Nice. You leave Taku
こういう
alone.
時はきつく言った方がいいよ。
Rimi turned back to me and smiled.
こう言っておけば案外あっさり引き下がるでしょ。
Hey, I doubt it. Was that really true? Rimi didn't think it was that big of a deal, but maybe that was just because she didn't know a lot about the internet. Wouldn't that just make him even more mad? Especially somebody like Shogun. I gulped and waited for Shogun's next words. They came quickly. Ah. Nice. Nice, nice. There was silence. Oh no. I knew that would make him mad. That last sentence sounded really pissed off.
どうせ口だけだよ、口だけ。まさかここに直接押しかけてくるなんてことはないって。それよりタク、大丈夫だった？ごめんね、電話くれたでしょ。ちょうどこっちに向かってるところだったから出られなかった。さっきの地震の後、タクが心配になってここまで全力疾走してきたんだ。来てよかった。
Even as she talked, I couldn't take my eyes off the monitor. The words "I'll kill you" frightened me more than I could say.
なんてこと。
私が来たから、もう平気だよ。何の心配もないから。
なんてことしてくれたんだよ。殺される。あいつに殺される。早く逃げないと。
落ち着いて。殺されなんてしないよ。タクの考えすぎ。
The hell's with that expression? Suddenly, Rimi fell silent. Her eyes narrowed and she looked up at the ceiling.
どうしたの？
その目。誰の目？
What the fuck? She whispered, her expression twisted, and she put her hands up to her head in pain. The fuck?
急に痛くなってきた。痛い。そう。
She fell to the ground as if unable to bear the pain. She shook her head frantically from left to right.
なんで急に。
No. I looked up at the ceiling. Beyond it, to where there might be a satellite. Was Shogun attacking? And then blood dripped from her mouth. The moans suddenly stopped and her body shook. She fell headfirst onto the floor. Well, that's not good.
リミ。
There was no answer. She wasn't moving at all. She'd been killed. Shogun's electromagnetic wave attack from the satellite had killed her. It was such a quiet way to murder. He killed Rimi without making a sound, a smell, or anything else that would let you detect him. And the silence only made it more horrifying. There was nowhere to run. I dropped to my knees right there and tried shaking her shoulder.
ねえ。起きてよ。リミ。
There was nowhere to run anywhere on Earth.
僕を置いていかないでよ。
Shogun could attack me anywhere I went.
こんなの妄想に決まってる。
Well, it was? Huh. Okay. There was no indication that we jumped into a delusion. None at all. None at all. What the fuck? However, if the previous choices were anything to go by, Rimi should show up. Because I think our delusions are getting stronger, and if Takumi has this power where he could project his delusions, and in a way maybe predict the future in a way, then, well, Rimi should show up and hopefully not fucking die. I came back to my senses and saw that I was in front of the computer monitor. Rimi's comment was gone. Shogun's "I'll kill you" was gone too. I looked around the room and Rimi's corpse was nowhere to be seen. It was a relief to know she hadn't been killed, but I was disappointed to know that she hadn't really come. Why? Why didn't you come? Can't you see how scared I am? Shogun had already left the chat. The only traces of him were the 4 lines he'd left. I didn't even want to see the words he'd written, so I quickly left the chat room myself. I was still shaking. Shogun was taunting me. What was so fun about stalking me like this? Did this mean that I had been chosen as the next victim, and Shogun was finally ready to put his plan into action? Or that I was the perfect patsy to take the fall for his murders?
誰か助けてよ。
I looked to post-awakening Seraton, pleading for her to save me.
一人は怖いんだ。
I didn't want to be alone. I wanted somebody to be by my side. I wanted somebody to protect me.
そうだ、学校だ。学校へ行けば。
Rimi was there. Or was she? I couldn't handle being alone and scared anymore. I stripped off the sweatshirt I always wore that I was when I was at home, quickly changed into my uniform, and left the base. I don't know if this is a good idea, to be honest, because the school also was in a frenzy. So many places were in a frenzy. The cold wind outside made my headache feel a little better. Shibuya seemed more tense than usual. Maybe it was the earthquake. I could hear the sounds of sirens in the distance. When one stopped, another started. I couldn't tell if they were fire trucks or ambulances, probably both. Yamate Street, just one street over from where I was walking, was at a standstill. Several cars had been in head-on collisions and abandoned where they sat. There was no sign of the drivers. The abandoned cars were blocking the road and causing a traffic jam. The other drivers were furiously banging on their horns. As I slowly and unsteadily walked toward the school, a dog ran past me, howling. It was a chihuahua with bloodshot eyes. Its tiny body was running at full speed, dragging a leash behind it. Drool was pouring from its open mouth. Had it gotten separated from its owner? I don't think that's the only problem there, buddy. As I watched it distractedly, I stumbled over something and almost fell. There was a crack in the ground. That's what I tripped on. Did the earthquake cause it? I stopped and looked up at the sky. There were several goddamn clouds now lazily traveling through the muddy blue sky. Supposedly the sky had gotten white, like an aurora right after the quake, but there were no traces left of that now. And this wasn't the Shibuya I knew. I felt really tense and uneasy. It wasn't just the earthquake. It wasn't just the headache. It wasn't just those things. It felt like a terrible urge was going to overcome me at any second. Just walking down the street for some reason made me want to kill someone? What the fuck? Alright. You know, it'd be how it be sometimes. By the time I reached the school gate, the terror and fear within me had grown even stronger. I felt so cold that my body wouldn't stop shaking. My headache had come back. I could see a crowd near the third-year students' building. I looked for Rimi there. Strangely, they were all looking up at the school building.
Oh, Taku!
Misumi ran up to me. What's going on, buddy? Good, I could ask him where Rimi was.
お前、今日学校来てたんだな。いや、そんなの今はどうでもいいから。
He looked pale, and his expression was deadly serious. It was rare to see Misumi so badly shaken. What had happened?
マジで。やばいよな。あれ。
Bad? What was bad? Oh no.
病気だったんだろ。精神病のことがバレて余計におかしくなっちゃったらしいぜ。
Oh no.
さっき飛べるとか言ってたぜ。やべえよ。やばすぎる。
Something happened to
俺
Fess.
人が死ぬとこマジで見てんだけど、きっとグロすぎて最高だぜ。
What the
早く
fuck?
落ちてこねえかな。
Oh no, she hasn't. Okay, she hasn't jumped yet. I could hear voices around me saying those things. Could it be? A terrible thought ran through my mind. I looked up slowly to where the rest of the students were looking. Yep, and there's her sword. At the edge of the roof was a girl. She was holding the D sword just like she had in her concert. She was standing there like she was offering a prayer to God in heaven. It was Ayase Kishimoto. It darn sure was. Or Fess. It's easy to, say Fess rather than Ayase.
その体は写真の影に潜む。
Well, I feel like this next episode is going to be deep, quote unquote. I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, so, not really much I can say here because I have no idea what's happening. A strange event that's seemingly not natural. And another thing that I want to note is that I feel uneasy about being told by the potential enemy that they have prepared a gift for us. I just can't trust gifts or boxes anymore in the science adventure series. I can't say why either. But for those who understand, you understand. So I'm not really looking forward to whatever this gift is, especially if it's in box form. Thank you all for watching this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and all that fancy jazz. And I will see you all in the next episode. Take it easy.